Pastor Sergey, we've known him about 20 years now, and we worked first with him when we were doing English lessons, and then we would do a Bible study afterwards in English. And it kind of grew, and then we, together with him and another couple, created our church. And a couple years later, we called him as pastor, and we've been mentoring him because he had been a Christian only about 5 or 6 years at that point, come out of some addiction, and he's just grown
He was young in ministry.
Young in ministry, but he is just an awesome pastor. He is open, he is very personable, and just love him to death. Of course, he preaches at our church, which is in the city, which is about 30, 40 minutes from his house. And then all the ministry that's involved in that, the Bible studies and the visiting people and those kind of things. Our church has done some outreach to the refugees that are in our city and in our town. And so there's a lot of that movement going around. But he had also started working with the prison ministry, and it was just a small group of just a couple men, and he joined them and he started going into the prisons. Their inmate suicide rate dropped to 0. Assaults on staff dropped dramatically. And so in a prison meeting for the state of Vinnitsa, they were given their statistics, and when the prison staff gave these statistics, the whole group of people went quiet and said, how is this happening? And so they shared about Pastor Sergey and Anatoly and Anatolievich and all their ministry that they had been doing with the prisoners who are long-term in the prison, lifers, the pretrial inmates, and then prisoners that come from the whole area to the hospital prison there.
And the more this ministry grows in the prison, the more we can see our pastor growing.
Yes.
Remember, he's a very young pastor, and he's kind of growing into this, and he's been around church a little bit, but the church doesn't always teach good lessons. But he's overcoming all of that, and he's really starting to bloom with this ministry.
Yeah. And so when this situation happened, the prison system was so amazed that the director of all the prisons inside of the Vinnitsa state went to this group and said, we want you in every one of our prisons.
This is huge.
It's a miracle. The problem was that the car that he had, his son had brought from Poland. It was an older car while his son had worked there for a short period, and it was just breaking down all the time. And he doesn't have a lot of money, so a lot of the money was going into the car. And I came to Mark and said, I think there's a need here.
And I thought, okay, well, let's just ask and see where God takes this. So Laura presented the idea to Living Hope, and Living Hope checked their budget and came up with the exact amount of money he needed to purchase the car. A private donor gave $500 so that he could register the car. So it was like a perfect setup for all this.
Yeah.
And he was fighting off tears that day.
I remember Mark first said, we've got this money for you, and told him the amount. And he was like, oh, you're joking.
He didn't believe it.
And we said, no, seriously, which is a word they use, seriozna. And he was like, what? Really? And he was speechless.